The thing that you know about Leon, he has quite a following. He taught for years here at Homewood. And then after he changed his name for the Witness to Protection program, he taught even longer. But I want to tell you a few things about him you may not know. First, he went to Harding University. He actually graduated from Harding. Some of you didn't think Leon even went to college. Okay.
And I'll prove it today.
Yeah. He joined the FBI in 1967, a scary thought. So watch what you tell this man. Of course, it's too late if you didn't know he worked for the FBI before. He has an interesting fact in his background, and that is our own Steve Brannon, who was in the FBI, was recruited by Leon.
No. I finally let him in. He was not
right. Well, okay. There are mixed reviews on that.
Right.
That'll be later. Okay. But Leon happened to go by Birmingham Southern, and he saw Steve in his naval uniform. Steve was recruiting folks for the Navy. I didn't know people left Birmingham Southern to go to the Navy. But anyway, he was doing that.
That's the reason they sent Steve there. They didn't expect anything.
They didn't expect anything. But Leon actually knew Steve's father, who was a preacher, which is probably something you didn't know about Steve. And he convinced him to come, and that changed everything. Then, after a long and successful career with the FBI, Leon joined EBSCO, international company, as their management recruiting manager. Well, they never had one before, so Leon was it. But he went to Australia, he went to New Zealand, went around the world recruiting people.
One of our managers is sitting right back here.
Really? Really? Yeah? Who's that?
I'll tell you later.
Okay. Yeah, all right.
We're still doing the background.
Yeah, well, that's okay. 18 years with EBSCO, and then retired. And there's a little known fact about Leon, and that is he is actually on the special committee for the FBI. They started categorizing terrorists, TSA has, and by age. And should there be any activity and any concern in the retired to deceased category of terrorists, Leon is the man. Please help me welcome Leon Seisman.
You can always tell the mornings that Russ forgot to take his medication. Isn't this a great class? I mean, this is where it's just so neat to meet with friends, to worship God, but do it in a pleasant and nice manner. It's great to have the feeling of being accepted in such a class. See friends, see what's going on. But what if you did not have a place like this? What if there was a place like this, but you were asked not to be a part of it? You were a social outcast. That's kind of the thing we're going to talk about some this morning. But one of the strange phenomena that's happening in our world today is something called cyberbullying. It takes place in our school system. And many times it's 13 and 14-year-old girls. They will pick out one girl and decide to constantly bombard her with emails that are just horrible. You're fat. You're ugly. You smell bad. People laughed at what you wore to school today. Boys don't like you. To the point that some of these girls have taken their own life. Recently, a 13-year-old girl in Florida hung herself after receiving all these. The sheriff who investigated was so unbelievably shocked by what these girls did who bullied her that he wanted to arrest the parents for not having more insight to what your child is sending another 13-year-old child. Recently in Texas, a girl who was a victim of this cyberbullying jumped off a building and killed herself. When one of the girls who was sending her all these nasty text messages heard about it, she immediately texted all the other girls and said, "Yay, she finally did it. She's dead." And then capital letters, "Good riddance." It's 13. I don't care about those people. I care about that little girl who was so socially outcast that life just held no meaning for her. And that's kind of what we're going to look at today, a situation where someone was a social outcast. Can we put the screen up about... Today is the idea of just 4 verses. If you have your Bible with you, turn to Matthew chapter 8, verses 1 through 4. We're using the NIV for this particular situation. But there's only 4 verses. When Jesus came down from the mountainside, a large crowd followed him. Jesus had been up doing the Sermon on the Mount. He had taken his apostles up there with him and was teaching them a whole new way of life. An idea of how to live the Christian life, why it was important. And it was completely against all the things that they had been living up until that time. So Jesus was there. This was very important. And they had been up there for a period of time. And he comes down. And when he comes down, look what happens. Jesus came down from the mountain. A large crowd followed him. And then a man with leprosy came. Any of you ever known anyone with leprosy? Anybody ever seen anyone with leprosy? Pictures. You're going to see some more in just a minute. Leprosy is mentioned throughout the Bible. But I never knew much about it. Do you? You never knew anyone that had leprosy? Never seen anyone who had leprosy? Don't even know if it exists much today. And is it the same kind of leprosy? So part of the thing we want to look at is these verses, but I asked Dr. Stephen Stair if he would take a minute and explain what leprosy is so we get an idea of what we're talking about here when this talks about the leper. High tech, we've got all this down.
Medical correspondent here, Sanjay Gupta. I've never seen a leprosy patient. Not many doctors in this country have seen a leprosy patient, but it still exists. It's up to 1 million people with leprosy still in the world. It's called Hansen's disease. It's actually an infectious disease caused by Mycobacterium leprae. That's the same category as a tuberculosis type infection. It invades the peripheral nerves in the skin. It is most likely transmitted by the respiratory route, nasal droplets. Also can enter through broken skin. So that was the big concern about isolating lepers. There's actually one other way that it's transmitted in the United States through an animal. Does anybody know what that is? Jay Clark was nice enough to demonstrate this for us. Yeah, he's in the hospital now. It's another good way to get rid of our lawyers in the country too. So. No, actually, don't touch an armadillo. There's about 100 cases a year in the U.S., and there has been some evidence that they are spread by armadillos. Currently, India has greater than 50% of the cases of leprosy. You'll notice that most of these countries are third world countries. They don't have good water. They don't have good bedding. It causes immunosuppression in people. And most people with a competent immune system are not going to develop leprosy, even if you're exposed to it. So very, very low risk in this country. International travel is what brings a lot of it to the United States and to other developed countries. So it's very rare in our country, but it's still a significant World Health problem. In fact, there were 5 million patients with leprosy in 1985. A huge WHO, World Health Organization, push to eliminate has got that down to maybe 500,000 to 1 million patients. Victim develops reddish patches on the skin, and you can imagine if you know about this disease and you develop these patches, well, you're in a lot of trouble because you know likely it's going to continue to progress. You lose sensation, the fingers, the toes, the nose, earlobes, numbness and tingling in the hands and the feet, burns because you can't feel anything, painless wounds on the hands and the feet, lumps on the face or earlobes, dryness, ulceration of the cornea leading to blindness. Diagnosis is made with skin biopsy, a DNA detection called polymerase chain reaction. There's really not a lab test for this in the United States. Treatment is actually very simple. It's a very, very curable, treatable disease with combination antibiotic therapy. And unfortunately, the places where it's still more prevalent, they just don't have access to these medicines. So I want to show you just a couple of pictures of patients with leprosy. These are horrifying. I mean, you can see his hands. You can see the nose. You can see the skin lesions. This is what the hands look like of somebody with leprosy over time that's not treated. There's no sensation. They can't feel anything. They get burned. The skin is just kind of eaten away. These are the nodules that appear on the face in patients with leprosy. And then this is just another man who you can basically see the life that these folks have is really just devastating. So Leon just asked me to give a few minutes, and I'll give him back the floor to just show you guys what we're really talking about.
Can you imagine living that kind of life? Can you imagine what it would have been like to be in that kind of situation? And one of the things I read too about it is called the living dead, because you're basically dead, but you're alive, and you probably wish you were dead. So looking at those verses and the things we want to kind of look at here, can we put the verses back up there? This is the idea of the leper coming to Jesus. So a man with leprosy came before Jesus and said, you know, you could take care of me if you would. How do you think he came to Jesus? What kind of attitude do you think he came to see Jesus?
Humble.
Humble. Why?
He needed help.
Oh, he needed help bad. Exactly. What else?
He believed.
He believed. I think that's very important. He had confidence that Jesus could heal him.
He was submissive.
Very submissive. He had humbled by the whole thing and reverence. So he was very concerned that Jesus could do that. And in the process of what's happening there, he comes to Jesus and he said, you know, you could do something about this. And then what happens? He touched him. I think that's very, very important. We like to touch, don't we? When you come in class, you shake hands with people, you hug people, you say, how's it going? You put your arm around them. But this guy, when was the last time anybody was nice to him? I mean, can you imagine a situation like him and what he was going through? I think it's kind of interesting. The Bible never wastes words, and it says in there, he touched him. What was the significance of that?
Well, the man had probably had to sneak into the crowd or get there
Yes,
because of the shunning that he had already experienced.
right.
So I'm certain that the crowd saw when he was touched.
Good point. John?
Jesus broke the law to touch him.
Exactly. Could y'all hear John? Jesus broke the law. How did he do that? You never could touch an unclean person. But Jesus did. He touched him. And then, again, I think about the pictures that Stephen just showed. And when it talks about the fact that he touched him, wow. Isn't that amazing? I think Jesus was showing that, you're a human. I care about you. To others, he certainly wasn't. I tried to imagine, and these are facts, and this is just my imagination, so just ride along with me on this. Imagine what it was like the day before he met Jesus. What was a typical day in the life of a guy like some of the pictures we just saw?
Constant rejection.
Oh my goodness. What a social outcast. Let's just imagine he's walking into a village. As he's walking in the path, somebody's coming from the opposite direction. He has to call out, unclean, unclean, and step at least 6 feet off the road and let them go by. As he's coming into the village, little children probably out playing may have seen him. Mama, Mama, look, here comes one of those lepers. You kids get in this house right this minute. And she probably covered her face with a shawl and shut the door. Maybe some teenage boys went out and threw rocks at him. Get out of here, you old leper. We don't want you here. Dogs snarled and snapped at him. There's even stories of rabbis that would throw rocks at lepers. That's how bad it was. But it's late in the afternoon. He's tired. He's hungry. He's thirsty. It's fixing to rain. He doesn't feel good. The wind's getting strong. And he knows nobody will take him in. Nobody. Even your own family would kick you out. So I think maybe he goes to the little village well, but he has to be very careful, because if anybody else is there, they will run him off. So he has to kind of look around, then make a break, and finally get some water. But he's also aware that he hadn't eaten all day. Nobody's going to give him anything to eat. So he goes to the back alleys, maybe even to the dump, and he's scavenging for something to eat. And whoops, there's a bone with a little piece of meat on it. There's some figs that some housewife threw away that I think they'll be okay. Maybe there's a piece of half-eaten fruit, and he gathers it up. And when he gathers it up, he now has to find a place to go, aware of the wind and the rain picking up. But maybe he finds a wall he can get behind. Maybe it has a bit of an overhang or an abandoned building that he can hide in. And he has his meager supper, and he pulls his clothes around him the best he can. And I think he may have thought a couple of thoughts. I think he thought, why is this happening to me? You ever had that? You ever had something happen? And you say, why me? What did I do? What's wrong? Why is this happening to me? Don't you imagine he might have thought that to a degree? Why did this happen to me? And you know, when you have a disease or when you're sick and you feel bad, don't you just kind of like to bundle up in something warm and snuggle in on the couch and maybe have some hot soup and maybe some hot chocolate or tea or something? He's laying there at hopefully behind a wall somewhere, hungry, cold, and terrible. I think the other thing he probably is thinking is, I don't even want to face tomorrow. This is a typical day in my life, and it's going to be just like this tomorrow. I had this living death, and fingers tips fall off, and then pretty soon I just disappear. I don't want to live like this. I want to get rid of this. But in our story, perhaps tomorrow will not be a typical day. And the reason for that is he's come down and he says, Lord, if you're willing, you can heal me. And Jesus reached out and touched him. And can you imagine that you had not been touched by another human for months, maybe years, and the first person that touches you is Jesus? And I don't think Jesus did that, do you? Give me your hand. I think Jesus took his hand like that. I mean, this is just my imagination. And he says, I'm going to take care of you. I'm going to make it special. You ever change the light bulb in your house and get shocked? Woo! Just kind of electrified. You imagine when this man felt the power of Jesus, what it might have been like, how it just went through his system. I've asked Donnie to lead us in a song that just might kind of grasp how this was going on, what it would have been like to have been touched by Jesus. We're going to put the words up there so you can follow it on the screen.
Shackled by a heavy touch me, and my soul. Something happened, and now I know He touched me and made me whole. Since I met this blessed Savior, and since He made me whole, oh, I never cease to praise Him. I'll shout it while eternity rolls. Oh, touch me, yes, He touched me, and oh, the joy that floods my soul. Something happened, and now I know He touched me and made me whole.
Verses again. Okay, I think there's probably an exciting way for him to have experienced that. And immediately he was clean. And Jesus said to him, don't tell anybody, but go to the priest. Why do you think Jesus didn't want him to tell anybody? It's just your thought. Nobody knows the correct answer.
It wasn't his time yet.
It wasn't time. Who said that? Explain that, Mike.
It wasn't Jesus' time yet.
I think that's exactly it. He didn't want people to follow him because he was a miracle man, could put on a show. It wasn't time for him to do that. He was still establishing who he was and why you should follow him, etc. He didn't want a bunch of followers who were just there for the show. Yes.
I also think that he didn't want the priest to know ahead of time what had happened. When he went, he was going to get an honest result, or what the priest determined as him being clean.
I think that's exactly it. Only the priest could pronounce him clean. And if they had sent word ahead, hey, Jesus just healed us, and the priest said, what are you talking about? So I think that it was really important that Jesus followed the protocol of the day and saying, you go see the priest. Don't tell anybody. Just go see the priest. And he can, because that's, when the priest says, it's just, Jesus said you're clean, who cares? But when the priest said you don't have it anymore, then that was it. So by doing that, I think that was very important that he did that. And he, by doing so, followed the protocol, because once it got there in Leviticus, it talks about things you have to do. Kind of nice little story, isn't it? Kind of a cute little story. But what's in it for me today? What do you need to take from this class that's going to make the rest of the day and the next week even better because of this? Larry?
I'll give you my opinion.
Yes, sir.
I think that when you see the pictures of leprosy, you can see how bad it is. And I think there's one thing worse than leprosy, and it's sin. And Jesus touches us and cleanses us of our sin. And that's what we can learn today.
I think that's an excellent point, because and even when Jesus touched the leper, it was like, well, you may get the leprosy now. And I think Jesus is in a way saying, I can take your sin, I can take your leprosy, I can do all this. I think the real important thing for us to think about today is the three words that Jesus said. I am willing. Very small, three simple words. I am willing. And I think it's just kind of interesting that he brought this up, because what's the name of our class? Encouraging words. Is there any more encouraging word when you have a problem than someone says, I'm willing to help you? Do you ever come out from shopping, being somewhere, get in your car, turn the key, and it goes click, 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 click. Battery. You get out, you raise the hood, and somebody stops and said, "Can I help you? You got a problem?" "Well, you know, I got some jumper cables." Somebody at work knows you have a problem and says, "Look, you know, that's a pretty big project. Do you need some help? I'll be glad to join in." The idea of I am willing. I am willing can only come from the heart of a servant. I am willing is the result of someone who has the heart of a servant. You know, we are in the process of starting a brand new year. We make sometimes New Year's resolutions, etc. But wouldn't it be great for us to have the idea of, I want the heart of a servant, and then the attitude of I am willing. And the only way that can happen is because he was willing.